Ever since the first God of War first released in 2005 for the PlayStation 2, it became one of the main franchises in Sony's lineup, and one of the most adored hack and slashes of all time. With 7 games already released, not including re-releases and remasters, Sony is now releasing a new God of War for the PS4 next year. Despite still playing with Kratos from the first series, this game is gonna take place several years after Kratos has taken his revenge on the Olympian gods, in the events of God of War 3. The setting this time will be set in the Norse mythology instead of the Greek one, and although they have confirmed that the previous story will not be put aside, we will see a whole new unrelated storyline with what seems to be a much more calmer, but not less damaged Kratos. He's also a lot buffer. God, is everyone taking steroids now? Anyway, my name is Rinnegan, and today we take a look at 6 things I already love about the new God of War game. Number 6. Kratos' son will not need babysitting. One thing I hate in a game is when you have to babysit. Having to rely on the AI to complete a mission is just damn right infuriating, especially when you have no way of actually taking care of the escortee and have to rely solely on RNG. But as we can see in the trailer, not only does he not need babysitting, but Atreus is actually helping Kratos during the combat and climbing sections. This was one of the worst fears regarding the new God of War when I first saw the previous trailer. However, with what I've seen during E3, it seems that Kratos' son will improve side by side with Kratos during the campaign, so you'll probably get new abilities and ways for him to help you, so what I thought would be a flaw might actually turn out to be a nice mechanic. Number 5. The game is ditching QuickTime Events. Now, first things first, let me start by saying that it's not that I don't like QuickTime Events in general. In fact, when done correctly, it actually ends up adding to the whole cinematic experience of a video game. When looking back to games like Shenmue, for example, I think everybody loved the QuickTime event sections. You felt like you took part in the game's cutscenes, which in a cinematic game like Shenmue, where cutscenes and storyline were probably the most important part in the game, is a very big plus. And the other thing the game did right with the mechanic was that since the story mode was not linear, failing a QuickTime event didn't mean you had to retry most of the time. So if you failed, you had to end up finding another way to complete that part, adding a lot more tension and pressure to those parts, only because there was no way of redoing that part if you failed. This for me is definitely the right way to implement QuickTime events. However, hack and slash games are supposed to be fast and fluid, so adding cinematic QuickTime events feels to me like it breaks the game's flow and speed, making it a lot less enjoyable. But don't get me wrong though, I don't think having QuickTime events in an hack and slash is entirely game breaking. Team Ninja decided to add QuickTime events in Ninja Gaiden 3, and hey, the game is still one of my favorite in the franchise. And of course there are a lot of players who enjoy the way God of War handled QuickTime events in the past, but I do feel that the fact that the new God of War is ditching them makes it a lot more appealing to me. Number 4. Graphics and art style. Okay, so for number 4, the trailer speaks for itself. Graphics are looking friggin' amazing. Characters and fighting animations are looking great, and one of the things I'm loving about this game is without a doubt its art style. As we can see in this section of Kratos going up the mountain with Atreus, the scenery is looking spectacular. And me being one of those gamers that stops playing every time he sees a beautiful landscape just to take screenshots, I feel like I'm going to be idling quite a lot in this one. This climbing section is looking amazing, as well as the way the environment feels alive. There's a lot going on screen, and this boat section, well, it's just breathtaking. Allied with a good soundtrack and the fact that they're going to be approaching the Norse mythology instead of the Greek one, there's a lot of new stuff they can explore in terms of design and vibe. I'm really looking forward to see what they can do with this. Number 3. Gameplay was not recycled. Okay, so even when developers take some time to release a new game in a franchise, if the franchise has seen a lot of releases, all of us gamers get to that point when we ask, again? Seriously? God of War was no different, but after realizing that the game is going to be made from the ground up, I really want to see what they can do with it. It definitely feels way different. The game is a lot slower, and there seems to be no jumping nor air combos whatsoever, which was a trademark in the series in the first place. When a reboot happens, usually, even if the game turns out to be good, there are always mixed feelings on whether the game should be like the original or not. But I can give you a very personal positive example of what happened with one of my favorite gaming series of all time.
Rinnegan, you have a lot of favorite games.
Yeah, I do. I can't decide. Anyway, The franchise I'm talking about is, of course, Halo. The Halo trilogy was amazing. I loved the story, the gameplay, the characters, but when Halo 4 was released, I felt like Microsoft was really trying to milk the series in a way that was going to kill it. Halo 4 was mediocre in my opinion, and things were not looking great, but turns out I was wrong. 343 Industries really learned from Halo 4's mistakes and ended up making a great game, which was Halo 5. Halo 5 feels really fresh while still retaining the old Halo vibe, and even though I'm not still completely into the new story, the game turned out great, so bring on Halo 5. But going back to God of War, this time instead of the blades of Athena, Kratos is now a proud owner of an axe, which can be used as a melee weapon, but also as a projectile. He's also an owner of a shield, and he also beats the crap out of monsters with his bare hands. He hasn't lost his touch, has he? The pacing is a lot slower than the previous games, and it seems like the environment will also play a big part in combat. Overall, the game is feeling really fresh compared to the others, so I'm really feeling optimistic about it. Number 2, combat impact. Previous installments in the series were known for their violence, and of course the new God of War is no different. But one thing I noticed straight away was the increased impact of Kratos kicking the hell out of those monsters. Every hit Kratos does makes you go, ooh! And I think this has a lot to do with the fact that the camera is now over the shoulder and much closer to Kratos. I love it when developers successfully make you feel what you're doing in a game, and God of War seems to capture exactly that. And for number 1, the game has a giant snake who wants to help you. From what we can see at the end of the trailer, there's a giant snake who wants to help Kratos and Atreus. The snake is named Rinnegan, and I'm really hoping I'm spelling that right. Also known as the world's serpent. According to Norse mythology, when Rinnegan releases its tail, Ragnarok begins. Ragnarok is of course a series of events that... Wait. Where am I going with this? I don't need to explain myself. There's a giant snake who's freaking wants to help you. End of story. But seriously guys, enough of my opinion, I want to hear your thoughts. Are you excited for the new God of War game? Leave it in the comment section below. And as always, if you want to see more gaming goodness, subscribe to our channel. I've been Rinnegan, and I'll see you next time.